We are live in Dundalk for the first of our 3 election debates before polling day at the end of this month, on the 29th of November. We've introduced our panel. We're now going to go to our audience, who we have asked to join us with questions that they will put directly to the panel, and they will be seeking answers. And we will hold the politicians to account if they do not answer these questions. And I'm sure our first guest, Owen Lennon, will be more than happy to do that. Owen Lennon, he's the owner of RD Coach Trim and a member of the RD Traders Association, and he has the first question. Owen.
Hello, thank you for this opportunity on it. Minimum wage has risen by 30% in the past 5 years. Energy costs increased by 20% in the last 2 years. There's a lack of banking competition in Ireland as a whole. Businesses are now facing added costs from extra bank holidays, sick leave, pension enrolment. We don't see it across the board with your own guards, nurses. They're not getting the same kind of increases as public sector is on it. So my question is, what are you going to do to support businesses, especially small homegrown businesses, and ensure the country maintains a competitive edge for entrepreneurs? And then my second question as well is, infrastructure is the lifeline of any economy. The traffic in RD is a joke. The bypass is badly needed. I think one of you said it's 8 years late. It's actually 20 years since it came on board for it. The bridge has fallen down. A part of the roof fell off and stopped the whole town for about 2 weeks. The water's constantly on and off. What will you offer the people of RD for the forgotten town?
Okay, that was Owen Lennon, owner of RD Coach Trim and member of the RD Traders Association, with our first question. Alison.
Owen, for those questions. Look, I think over the last couple of years we have really made it clear in Fianna Fáil that we want to give workers a break. That's where we're focused. The likes of the cut from the USC from 3% to 1.5% isn't going to be in the manifesto. We're increasing the higher tax entry point to €50,000, which really will give a break to those who are working, people who really want to work. And of course increasing the income tax credits to at least €100. We're fully aware of how small businesses are struggling, and I'm definitely urging anybody within a small medium enterprise to check out the Power Up grant, which is €4,000 grant, which is readily available. So I really urge people to apply for that. The infrastructure we know needs to be there for the amount of housing, for the amount of dereliction that we're suffering. We are increasing our grants, the likes of the over-the-shop grants, €100,000 grant. We'll certainly look at the likes of vacancy and dereliction, which I'm seeing right across the county. RD, Drogheda, Dundalk, nobody is escaping from that. It is the Living City Initiative by any other name, and that's what we're looking at. I've been in RD 3 or 4 times now over the hustings, and I've spoken to traders, I've spoken to residents. We know that congestion is a massive problem there. We know also that the bypass has been a big issue. We know that there have been impediments, there have been objections. We know that they have gone through a rigorous court process. We know now the funding is still there. We have to look at what is going to work for everybody, because we know that businesses like yours may suffer because of the bypass, but we have to make sure that we're looking after the town centre, the residents, the shops who people just simply can't get to because of the congestion.
Okay, Alison, we move on. Thank you for that. Michael O'Dowd, Ain2.
Well, I have quite a lot of experience in working with Indigenous Irish businesses. I was a project manager with Enterprise Ireland for some years, and was responsible for bringing investment into this county. So I know the challenges that they face. I know the challenges that entrepreneurs in particular face, the sleepless nights that they have to go through before they make an invest or don't invest decision, and then the constant worry about being able to meet the payroll at the end of the week. The reality is that the cost of services to businesses is far too high. We have the highest electricity prices in Europe, and that needs to be dealt with and needs to be brought down. The rate base, the whole basis on which we value rateable properties also needs to be looked at, because the reality is that consumers are moving to out-of-town shopping, and yet the centre of the town is still where you pay the highest rates. That certainly is something that A&2 will look at. In relation to infrastructure in RD, like Alison, I've been in RD quite often during this campaign, and really there's quite considerable congestion there with the lack of the bypass. And as you said, it was in the early 2000s that it was first mooted. Our planning system is far too slow in terms of coming to a decision. People are entitled to object, but we need decisions much quicker because businesses need certainty in relation to where they're going. There's a lot of positives happening in RD as well. You know, I was delighted to see the community initiative in terms of the railway park, which is absolutely fantastic, which apparently the county council want to close down. But in terms of infrastructure, I also want to mention the fact that Cullen, which is on the same road, also has issues in relation to safety that needs to be looked at in the overall scheme of things. But RD is a really important town in the centre of the county, and it does need investment, and I know it needs the government to take some action.
Michael O'Dowd of A&2, thank you for that. Kevin Callan, Independent.
Thanks for the question. I don't know if there's a competition for who spends most time in RD, but I'm in it every day or every second day with Councillor Jim Tennety. And I live just out the road from it. So to be totally blunt, like RD has been failed for decades. 8 years ago, myself and Jim actually managed to get Shane Ross to sign off on the bypass, but 8 years have passed, and it's not acceptable. The Mid-Louth area, you know, for every election, every 5 years, for 40 years, RD has gotten commitments which have not been seen through. Dunleer, Cullen, you know, the whole middle of the county. And people talk about the bypass, but the other issue is Mid-Louth in terms of rail travel. So the Dunleer train station has been promised for 40 years. It closed in 1984, 2 years after I was born. And somebody who lives in RD who wants to get to Dublin, if they want to use public transport, they have to drive 28 kilometres each way to Drogheda to get a train, which is ridiculous. These promises, and I suppose that's one of the reasons I'm running, is that these promises come up all the time and every party jumps on them, but they're never delivered. In terms of business supports, outside of politics, I deal with SMEs in my day job every day of the week. And I know SSP, you know, when the government announces decisions on pensions and SSP and so on, I hear business owners tell me, where are we going to get that money next year? How are we going to do this? It's not viable. And the other thing I will say outside RD, government makes decisions on matters like the D Hotel in Drogheda, where they took 20 million euros out of our local economy by closing that hotel down as a tourist hotel. That has cost jobs. So it's the likes of that. But RD, in my view, it's not just the bypass. There's not just one thing needs to be done. There's a rake of things that need to be done. And if I am elected, it's something that I will be focusing on.
Kevin Callan, Independent, thank you for that. Al McCrainer, Social Democrats.
A little bit more than yourself. But with sincerity, thanks Owen for the question. In terms of business, I have a master's degree in entrepreneurship, and it is my background, so, and I'm acutely aware of the pressures that is on your business in particular. So what we have at the moment is we have a cost of living crisis that's putting pressure on your employees. So as the cost of living goes up, the standard of living goes down, and that creates pressure on you, and we need to address that, and then by proxy address then the additional pressures that's kind of going on yourself as an employer. I've only ever worked in private enterprise myself. We need to make greater funding available to incentivise firms for human capital. We need to scale up microfinance. We need to make more support available through the LEO, and we need to look at our VAT entry threshold for small businesses. So we need to do a lot of things like that in terms of being able to help businesses such as yourself, which are, in RD being one of the biggest employers, are massively important and cannot be left behind. In terms of the bypass, again, being from RD, I'm acutely aware of the need for a bypass, but I'm also aware of that there was a lack of consultation and very poor planning when it came to the people and businesses that bypass was literally going to drive through. So what we have is a cul-de-sac being created that has spurred these objections, when literally that bypass would have been built 8 years ago for the want of a roundabout. And I have consulted both sides of this, and I've literally been told if there's a roundabout on that bypass would have been done already. So it is a complete lack of consideration for the people of RD, and being told and dictated to, this is the bypass you're getting. And it has created a them and us mentality between the people of the town and the people of the surroundings of the town, whereby there's a lack of communication. I'm not sure if the people of the town are completely aware that only the lack of a roundabout, that bypass, would be done.
Live in Dundalk this morning for our first election debate. The first of three. Owen Lennon, owner of RD Coach Trim and a member of the RD Traders Association. But the first question to our invited panel, it concerns small business, the difficulties they face, and infrastructure. Paula Butterly, Fine Gael.
Thank you, Owen, for your questions. In relation to what we're doing, what Fine Gael is doing and will do for businesses, first and foremost, we're committed to an 11% VAT rate. We've already put out there a 4,000 energy package grant, and we're committed to continuing that. We are also committed to reducing the PRSI, which could effectively help businesses with less than 50 employees to save over 30,000 a year. We also have our small business test, which will help but not hinder businesses in processing grants, processing supports, and helping them in administrative tasks. In relation to your infrastructure question, absolutely, the bypass in RD has certainly added and frustrated both people of RD and also businesses. As part of the council to help businesses, we brought back parking within RD town for 2 hours to alleviate the pressure to be able to find space in front of your shops, so in order to help you increase the footfall within your shops. But I do understand the frustration. I'm going to take first dibs on RD, seeing as I'm an elected member of the RD Municipal, and also the fact that my family has lived there for a few generations. It is frustrating, and it goes back to planning. You're all well aware now at this stage the legal process has gone through, and that the group concerned were denied their leave to appeal the decision of the High Court. I would sincerely hope that it ends there and that they won't frustrate the legal process any further. However, that is their right if they should do so. In relation to infrastructure, you know, it's not just about the bypass, and Councillor Callan did mention Dunleer train station. I think that very often, while it would be lovely to open Dunleer train station, I think we have to think about the future and build for the future.
Okay, Paul,
my proposal is an infrastructure hub which will serve
Paula
all
Butterly
of
of
Midloud
Fine
and
Gael.
North
Thank you
Drogheda.
for that. We move on now to Marianne Butler of the Green Party.
Again, thank you, Owen, for the question. I suppose I've lived a lifetime above a shop, the daughter of a small business owner, so I 100% understand the pressures that are going on, and it's 10 times worse since my parents have retired. What I would say is there's a huge amount of supports there in relation to your costs, and not just the grants that have been mentioned here. And what I would say to any small business owner is to pick up the phone to the local enterprise office. Only just last week there was another grant announced of up to €120,000 for measures for small business owners, and again, you don't have to own your premises to avail of them, and those measures will help reduce your costs. And again, there's programs there with the local Leo office in terms of Green for Micro, again focusing on how to reduce costs and the different supports that are available to you. So I would just urge people to do that first and foremost, because there's a huge amount of support there to small businesses. I would say as well, just in terms of dereliction, yes, 100% we need to be doing more. There is a fund there for Dundalk and Drogheda in terms of the local authority buying derelict buildings and essentially selling them on, putting them back into use. And only just yesterday, when we approved the budget, there's now a fund of 1 million for Midloud and areas outside of Dundalk and Drogheda to do the exact same thing. But I do want to see more living over the shop. I know it works, I've lived it. And again, going back to what was said about the bypass, again, it goes to planning, but I think we could have done the planning for the bypass so much better. And I'm so sorry that RD is dealing with what it's dealing with. You go up the road to Carrickmacross, they've been bypassed, and you can see how well that's worked there. But I think sometimes you need to go back to the drawing board, especially with these older planning applications.
Marianne Butler of the Green Party. Jed Nash of Labour.
I'm not there Dereliction was mentioned because dereliction is a form of official vandalism and it's not taken seriously enough. Louth County Council were allocated 7 million last year to deal with all of the dereliction in terms of CPOs in Louth. What we need to do is, as what Labour has proposed, streamline the CPO process, bring in compulsory sales orders as well to force businesses to actually sell properties onto those who may get planning to do something useful with it, and as well allow the revenue commissioners to collect derelict sites levies, because the derelict sites levies are effectively being ignored by local authorities. When revenue comes in, if a business gets into difficulty with revenue, they simply cannot trade. And if you have a derelict building and you can afford to leave that vacant, you must be very wealthy, so you need to be hit in the pocket where it hurts. Owen, I know your business. I've been in your business many, many times. I actually met one of your colleagues when I was canvassing in Marlmont last night. It is an excellent business. The reality is that this country, and we've seen it in terms of the risk to our corporation tax base and indeed to a risk to our income tax base, we are far too reliant for good jobs and taxes on foreign direct investment. We need to rebalance that. I started that job a number of years ago. I was considered to be a good Minister for Business and Employment. I helped to create the conditions to create more jobs and make our SME system in this country much more innovative and much more productive, and we've lost sight of that. We can do both. We can make our SME system productive and innovative, but we can also ensure that people are paid a decent wage and have decent working conditions as well. That is the essence of what I believe in: a good regulated market economy with dignity for work for everybody and decent wages. What we do need as well is to introduce a new system of financing for SMEs to help businesses like your own to scale up. We have a major problem in terms of lack of competition in banking in this country. It makes finance unaffordable. We want, and it's my plan that I published last week, to allow the Irish Strategic Investment Fund to invest more through the Future Ireland Fund in SMEs. We're in fact in Ireland investing more in international business through the funds that we've collected as taxpayers that we're putting into the Future Ireland Fund, that we are in SMEs.
Jed Nash of Labour, thank you for that. Rory O'Muraku, Sinn Féin.
And Owen, at the end of the day, in relation to his own business, I think it would be fair to say we've had a discussion before about the fact that if you had, I suppose, the grant schemes available to scale up, that your unit costs would drop and you would be more competitive. So I think there's some very specific issues in relation to your type of business. Look, a lot of this in the public domain at this point, but it's a matter of making it happen. I suppose the 9% VAT rate and it's the PRSI tax rebate that we had spoken about, and I think some other parties have taken it on board now. We have obviously proposed a mini budget because this needs to happen as soon as possible. If you just look at the town of Dundalk, we've seen the food house, we've seen the townhouse close, and you're talking about viable businesses, and you can't talk to a business owner who's not going to tell you about the particular issues they're under. Now, if we're talking about business, and that's everything from companies covered by the IDA right down to the smallest company that the local enterprise office talks about. What they will talk about is the housing crisis and how that impacts in relation to the cost of rentals, the cost of mortgages, just the unaffordability and unavailability, and how that is impacting in relation to major companies ensuring that they actually have housing for their workforce. So that's something that needs to be dealt with. Obviously, we have to look after our workers. That's why we're talking about taking the first 45,000 of the USC away so we can actually put money back into people's pockets. We need to reform energy costs. We're talking about reform of PSO and standing costs, and also reforming the CRU so it actually has real teeth. If we're talking about the RD bypass, absolutely necessary. It's been said by everybody else, absolute failures in the planning process in relation to resourcing the planning process, and even beyond that in relation to having a proper engagement so we would deal with the very easy issues early on. But
okay, Rory,
unfortunately, that's what we've been dealing with.
We're out of time on that, but thank you for that. That's Rory O'Muraku of Sinn Féin. You have listened intently to what the panel has had to say. Owen, is there anything they have said this morning that instills confidence in you to scale your business, to operate your business profitably and to continue?
Yeah, there is. There's just, I think Niall hit the nail on the head there with the cost of living crisis, but it's, you have to remember it's not up to the employers to cover that. It's up to you as the elected to actually deal with it and not I was going to use different words there, but skirt around the edges of it, like, you know, and blame this and blame COVID, whatever else. We have to get on with the job of it. So, and then in fairness, Jed as well hit on the banking sector, and it's good that somebody is listening to that, because 2.5 banks isn't enough on it. And you're dead right about foreign investment. It's a bit of a joke on that, on it. Then with the infrastructure, yes, we're all agreed on that, but keep in mind the bypass isn't the only thing. We have the water, we have the derelict buildings you're talking about as well. What if, a quick question on it then, what would you do in the interim? Because if the bypass was given the go-ahead today, it's still going to take 2 years. Town's a mess. Is the park and ride system available? There's zebra crossings in the town, which is poorly placed. Loads of different options on it. Thank you.
Okay, that was Owen Lennon, owner of RD Coach Trim and member of the RD Traders Association. Our first question. We will take a break and we will be right back. We've had our first question. We got through that. There was a supplementary to it. We'll try to get to it before we leave you at midday. But next we go to Anna McKenna, who is chairperson of the Drogheda City Status Group. Anna.
Can members of the panel representing the current government parties explain why Drogheda, Ireland's largest town and future city, has been ignored and neglected for so long? And do all panel members support city status for Drogheda? And what would be their big vision or ambition for the future Drogheda city?
Thank you for that. That was Anna McKenna, chairperson of Drogheda City Status Group. It's a conversation we had recently on the programme on LMFM. Alison Cummin.
Thanks very much indeed, Anna and Brian. Lovely to see you here today. Matt Cooper has the last word. Alison Common has the first word. So that's the way it's going to be for the day. But I'm more than happy to talk about city status. I think I met with you there just 2 weeks ago. The cornerstone of my campaign right from the start has been the likes of getting city status, getting a city manager or something along those lines for the Drogheda area, but not only the Drogheda area, right across Louth. I've advocated for a return to the likes of the town councils, and I'm delighted to see that in the Fianna Fáil manifesto. As a journalist, I've watched 2014. We all knew what might happen when the Borough Council, the local Borough Council, and of course RD Town Council and Dundalk were taken away. That was Labour and Fine Gael decision, and we know, everybody has said what a mistake it was. So that I'm really glad to see that, because it gives us something to work on. A new Louth CEO gives us something to work on to bring in city status. We know the numbers. I've spoken with you so many times. We are a city. We need to be a city with all the initiatives that come with that. But also we can learn when the likes of RD Town Council, then there will be somebody on the ground to take care of the likes of the bypass. Up in Dundalk, then we will each have our own municipal directions again. Maybe not returning to the old way, but coming into the new way. Yes, I am very disappointed and frustrated that, as I've seen, we haven't got city status, or we haven't got the likes of that. But then again, we haven't had a dedicated government TD in government looking after that, and that's what we will have when I'm elected, please God. That will be a voice calling for that from within the area.
Alison Cummin, thank you for that. Michael O'Dowd, Aintu.
Yeah, thank you for the question, and yes, I fully support city status for Drogheda. We need a unitary authority for Drogheda and Eastmead with all the issues that are cropping up there, and a huge increase in population in North Drogheda, Eastmead, South Louth. So city status would certainly solve that particular problem. And incidentally, like Bettystown has its own problems. They're looking for a 24-hour Garda station, and they deserve it, and I certainly will work for that. I've made a couple of submissions, both to the Electoral Commission and also to the Council in relation to this. Interestingly enough, when I spoke to the Electoral Commission member of staff there off the record, after they made the decision not to create a 3-seater constituency for Louth and Eastmead, what they said was that there was a considerable amount of support for the concept from Louth, but that there wasn't the same level of support from Eastmead. So I think that's something we need to work on, to let people in Eastmead know that there was no threat from becoming a part of a city with South Louth, with Drogheda. In relation to how I see it developing, I think we need proper planning, not just in the future, but we need it now. And I think a really good model was in Clonburris in Dublin, where they had a special development zone created, and they had the planners, the engineers, the utilities, water, electricity, architects, all on board, creating the development of a major new town in that area. And that's what we need at present, because in Drogheda at present we have houses going up in the north of the town and in the south of the town, and it's very much developer led. So we need the community to have a say there. In the master plan for that area, there was talk of a sports campus for the area. We've no sight of that yet.
Okay,
So we need
Michael O'Dowd.
community facilities now.
Michael, thank you for that. Kevin, Callum.
Just in relation to city status for Drogheda, I'm fully aware of the work that the campaign have done over the years, and to me a massive issue in relation to all of this was the abolishing of Drogheda Borough Council and the other councils, RD and Dundalk. That's 10 years ago, so anybody who comes here today to say we're going to reverse that now, why hasn't that started? The legislation, the 2014 Act should have been pulled back, and we should actually have those authorities restored. I would have spoken to Anna back in 2014 when the Act actually went through. I was mayor at the time, and I know the struggles we had at that time, and Jed was there at the time as well, to try to retain as much as we could of the identity of Drogheda, which was being taken away at a national level. I'm very concerned when I hear parties talking about, a city manager or something along those lines. I think it's doing a disservice to the campaign that up to now parties have jumped on this and committed to something of some variety, but it's not clarified. We've had ministers come down and tell us it's going to happen, but it hasn't actually been set out how that's going to happen. And myself and others on this discussion this morning have been very clear on the mechanism to make that happen. But the City Status campaign have been clear from day one what they want. My point of view is we need the local authority back to facilitate the moving through of city status for Drogheda. But I include in that RD and Dundalk as well. That layer of local government removed needs to be returned, because people, like as Owen said with RD, you see the lack of on-the-ground involvement in things like dereliction, in things like oversight. So to me, we've got to go through the basic steps of that. But again, it's no use promising the City Status campaign something every election. The parties have to actually do something, and none of them can say, this is what I've actually done in the last 5 years to move this thing on.
Kevin Callum, thank you for that. Niall McCrainer.
Yeah, absolutely support city status, but it goes deeper than that, especially in terms of Drogheda and what that means. We need to see investment in our town centres. We need to promote regional economic development. We need to see increased funding for towns and villages. Otherwise, what we see in Drogheda at the moment is endemic. I actually met with Brian there at the dereliction talk there a few months ago in Drogheda, hosted by Dereliction Drogheda, and we had a great conversation about this and just the lack of investment. So it's one thing having city status, it's another thing being a city. So we need to see the investment that actually makes Drogheda into a city in terms of investment in Main Street, in terms of public transport, infrastructure, everything like that. And even in dereliction, we have in our manifesto, which is being launched later, something called meanwhile uses for buildings, so you can make them into public galleries and art spaces and things like that. Meanwhile, we're waiting for the full conversion. So yes, we absolutely support it, but as we say, we need to make sure that the investment goes along with that, because we see buildings literally falling down in Drogheda and RD, and previously we've seen one in Dundalk with a similar issue. So it's not good enough, and it's due to a lack of consideration and a lack of investment and a lack of care in our regional towns. Drogheda is simply not just a commuter town for Dublin for people to drive in and out to work. It is a home, and it is where people grow and raise their families, and it needs to be treated as such.
Al McCrainer, thank you for that. Let's go to Fine Gael now, to Paula Butterley.
Thank you, Alan, for your question. I have sat with you and spoken about the woes of Drogheda over the number of years, and certainly Drogheda is a beautiful historical town. It's a town where I've shopped, socialised with my friends and family over the decades. But you're right, it's lost its lustre, but there are green shoots. Fine Gael are very committed to relaunching the Urban Regeneration and Development Fund. There is also a firm commitment to bring policing back onto our streets, to help retailers to fight the petty crime on the streets, which is so hard and hitting them so hard, and possibly taking footfall away from the town centre. In relation to CSOs, I fully agree with Jed Nash on this issue, and it's something that I've been calling for, because it's one step in the process in relation to dereliction. And if we don't solve the issue of dereliction in Drogheda, we won't have a vibrant town city centre, and that is key to everything. As a councillor, I've brought about a review of the protected structures lists, as I believe we have planning laws there that are sufficient to guarantee the integrity of our buildings, and that would also help in relation to the costs for retailers. I also believe that the green shoots, as Alison mentioned earlier, are coming. We have the Westgate vision. We have proposals that I have brought through the Community Investment Fund to take those buildings, to have them bought. I've sat down with the local authority on this and reimagine Drogheda, and it'll take community, government and local authority to bring this about. But I believe there's a willingness to do that. Fine Gael are committed. I'm a person who lives within 15 minutes of Drogheda. I believe that there's a certain amount of inertia that's set in, and I have the fresh eyes to bring new solutions.
Okay, Paula, thank you for that. Let's go to the Green Party before we take our next break, and it's Marianne Butler.
Thanks, Anna, for the question. What I will say first and foremost is Dundalk and Drogheda were the biggest borough and town council in 2014. They were their own planning authority, their own rating authority, their own housing authority. We had a huge amount of autonomy, and with a stroke of a pen that was taken away in 2014. And the Green Party are committed to bringing back the town councils. And as well as that, we're offering towns with a population above 30,000, which takes in Dundalk and Drogheda, the option of holding a plebiscite to see whether they want a directly elected mayor. And I think that would be brilliant for both Dundalk and Drogheda to get their councils back and to have the option of a directly elected mayor. And we're seeing how that's working in Limerick. And again, that was the Green Party pushing that. I would say as well, what we've been pushing, my colleague Mark Deary was the one who spearheaded bids in Dundalk, the Business Improvement District, and I know Drogheda have followed suit there, and it's absolutely amazing what the bids companies are doing in both towns. And what I do want to see is, again, it's tackling dereliction, it's bringing people back into the towns, so it's getting that living over the shop right. And there's a huge potential in that in streets like West Street, Lawrence Street, and at the end of the day, you don't need Meath then to become a city. We'll have the people living in the town, we'll have the numbers, but I want the autonomy back to the towns. I really don't mind whether they're cities or towns. I think there is an argument for a city, a status, but bring the autonomy, the power back to the towns.
Jed.
Thanks for the question, Anna. I have a long track record of not just support for the city status group and concept, but practical support. I actually organised the commissioning of the boundary review, which would have organised the next logical step to the development of Drogheda as a city. I lost my seat by 300 votes in the 2016 election, and I paid a political price because there were some people in parts of Meath who rejected that idea. And indeed, I believe that the boundary review was gotten at, in fact, by Fine Gael, and it was changed, and to the detriment of Drogheda. The reality is that no amount of wishful thinking will create city status for Drogheda. We're in the business now of politics, we're in the business of making decisions and forming governments. If it's not in a manifesto, it doesn't get into a programme for government. The Labour Party manifesto states very, very clear, uniquely of all of the parties, we will create a legal pathway for city status, we will restore town and borough councils, and we will extend the Living Cities initiative to Drogheda, Dundalk and other large towns. That initiative was provided to Kilkenny, smaller than Drogheda, but denied to our own town. So this is senior hurling now, and no amount, as I said, wishful thinking will provide city status for Drogheda. You need to look carefully at the manifestos and who's actually proposing what. If I'm re-elected, I would hope that the Labour Party will be in government and that I will be one of those people who will be negotiating a programme for government and be a senior minister to deliver for Drogheda and to deliver the kind of change we need locally, because the reality is that our area and its potential is being held back.
Jed Nash, the Labour Party, thank you for that. Sinn Féin's perspective on this, Rory.
Drogheda city status, we are in complete support of this. It's been enshrined in Sinn Féin policy for a number of years. This is obviously down to huge work by Imelda Munster and Joanna Byrne, who I believe met the group last week. Look, we've all mentioned 2014. 2014 obviously was an austerity measure when local authorities were ripped of all powers, and some, if we talk about Dundalk, Drogheda and Ardee, they lost they lost their local authority, which had a concentration on those town areas. And we also had an absolute stripping of power. Like, whatever powers remain with the executive. Like, we all welcome what's happening in Limerick in relation to a directly elected mayor. We said we would like to see further powers. And so I think we need to get down to the raw details. And like, the raw details are, you're dealing with two local authorities. You have to make a determination in relation to what the parameters or boundary would be of Drogheda, of a city for Drogheda. And then we need to make sure we deal with the planning failures that there have been across the board. Look, we were talking earlier about infrastructure. None of us have got into the absolute failure that there has been as regards Irish Water being able to deliver. In Dundalk, we had 502 houses that were refused planning on the Blackrock Road on the basis of insufficient wastewater capacity now. And we're talking about a solution that could take anywhere between 2027, 2029, 2032. It's only now that Louth County Council and Irish Water are having a proper conversation, and I'm putting that on Irish Water rather than the local authority. So, and we also, a fear I've always had is, if another whooshy wanted to move in to the Dundalk area, I don't believe we have the clean water capacity. So we need to have the concentration on these big urban areas. We need to have the local powers, and we need the facility to deliver.
Let me, with that, get back to Anna McKenna, who posed that question. And it strikes me that everybody up there on that stage is in unison on this particular matter. Do you get the sense that something will happen, or will we be having this discussion the next time round, maybe in 4 years' time?
Well, we've been working for this for 14 years, and over the last year we've got the feeling that something's going to happen. We've been talking to ministers, but I would ask, how did Drogheda get to the stage it's got before something is done? And I think everybody has to step up now and work together to get Drogheda on the map. We have asked for a task force to be set up to consider it. And with the new CEO, it's going to make an awful difference, I believe, because he has the experience of Limerick, and Limerick was much the same as Drogheda. So we're hopeful, and please God, we'll get it. OK, that was Anna McKenna, chairperson.
But very quickly on something that
very
was said.
Quickly, 30 seconds, that's all I'm giving you, Alison.
Which was that Kevin Callan, he agreed that there should be somebody on the ground, a senior executive. I'm the only, Fianna Fáil is the only party who has brought that a motion for a city manager or a senior executive to Louth County Council.
Okay.
It should have been raised yesterday, it will be raised in December.
That. Alison, thank you for that. Welcome back to us live in Dundalk. We're heading into the final section of our first of 3 debates on the general election campaign. Now, prior to the break, we were about to speak to the Vice President of the Dundalk Chamber of Commerce and owner of Hannah MacDonald Marketing, and it's Hannah Latio MacDonald. Hannah, thank you for joining us. Your question.
Hello all, honoured to be here to represent the Dundalk Chamber of Commerce. At the Dundalk Chamber of Commerce, we believe small and micro businesses are vital to our local economy, and we highlight and, as highlighted in previous comments, they face significant challenges. We are concerned that certain local enterprise office supports are coming to an end. Micro businesses that are not destined for export do not receive the local support that they ought to. The Chamber offers a network that can act as support. However, what is required is the recognition that not all businesses can or want to be scaled up. The minimum wage, sick days and pension auto-enrolment are examples of roadblocks coming next year that have been mentioned in the previous comments, and also has the larger grants as well. The discussion around the supports for scaling up and smaller businesses may not have the funds to go for those grants. What additional supports do you believe should be offered to address the gap for those not wanting to scale up or to export and ensure our micro businesses thrive in our local community?
Thank you for that, Hannah. A number of issues raised there. We did touch on a lot of those earlier on in the programme. So, do you know, I'm going to go to you, Kevin, on the first one here. And I want to deal with the local enterprise offices, the LEOs. They were seen as being hugely successful, a one-stop shop for that small business that was looking for a little bit of mentoring and looking for support. And then we now understand that the services may be diluted.
Yeah, and Hannah, thanks for the question and great to see you again. I know we've met several times recently. In terms of the LEO, look, as chairman of the County Council, I would work closely with the LEO office. and I'm aware of the work that's done. And also with Dundalk Chamber, but 2 weeks ago we had the ambassador from Malta over to meet those small and medium-sized businesses who had an interest. So with the LEO supports that are there, again, this comes back to what's done from government level. So a LEO is fine, well and good, but if the LEO is not being allocated and assigned to do work, they're limited in what they can do. So I totally agree, and as I've said to Owen's question about RD, outside of being a public rep, I've worked for many, many years with small to medium-sized businesses. And I say the same thing I would say going back to Frank. Businesses are telling me that they're not being listened to. So, and I think this is a problem we have in Irish politics at the minute. It's a continuous message of everything's great, everything's fine, look at all we're doing for you. But then when you actually meet the business, you're told no. So I think the VAT rate, I think the SSP, I think auto enrolment, these things sound amazing. Okay. But businesses can't afford them.
Kevin, thank you for that. Michael?
Yeah, I mentioned earlier that I worked with Enterprise Ireland as a project manager and worked very closely with LEOs, and the LOUTH LEO in particular was very good in terms of encouraging businesses. So I'd hate to see their authority or their grant making capabilities diluted in any way, shape or form. One thing that disappeared over the last couple of years was the CSF fund, the Competitive Start Fund, which really was great for micro businesses that wanted to grow slightly, not necessarily to export or grow to 11 employees or so. But micro businesses are really crucial in terms of the local economy, local people, their craft businesses, their small food businesses, and there's a variety of other businesses that they incorporate. So yes, I would fully support giving more power to.
Okay, Michael, thank you for that. I know, Alison, you stepped out. The question we were talking about is supports for local businesses, small businesses, more so the role of the LEOs, the local enterprise offices, and the prospect that their powers and their services are going to be diluted. Your own view on it?
Apologies, I stepped out there for a moment and then got a call. I think the services of local enterprise centres are absolutely vital. I've worked really, really closely over the years as a journalist with them. I've seen what difference they can make, and I think they really need to be nurtured. Funding has got to be put towards the likes of our local enterprise offices in order for businesses to survive and thrive. And I think anything that the government can offer in support of that, as I mentioned earlier on, the likes of the €4,000 Power Up grant and start-up grants for local businesses is absolutely vital. And every business to make sure that they can get whatever incentive is there, whatever grant is there, work closely with the LEOs, and of course see if there's any government backing that you can possibly get.
Okay, thank you for that, Alison. Niall?
Supports for local enterprise services, as I said to Owen earlier. We want to scale up microfinance, and we want to ensure all primary and secondary legislation is conforms to impact assessments. So that's what we want to do. But we also have to remember that a lot of people in this country don't have pensions. Now, I know that doesn't need to fall back on the burden of an SME, but we need to have something in place. So it needs to be a balanced and fair approach. But I 100% agree. I'm 39. I was made redundant in the previous role, and I have no pension, and I have three kids under the age of 9. And another thing I want to go back to with the IFA is the so-called fair deal in terms of pensions.
Let's say in message, because your time is limited. In fact, your time is over now, okay. Niall, but thank you for that. Paula Butterly, Fine Gael.
Thanks a million. You know, I agree with everybody in terms of how important our SMEs are to our local economy and at a national front. You know, there is no doubt we have not said it's lovely and rosy out there for you. We've accepted the challenges, and we have, Fine Gael and the government have made various measures to try and ease that burden on SMEs. If you also look at where SMEs are based, they're based in and around the hinterland and in the rural areas of our big towns. So that is really family units. And Fine Gael are committed to reducing PRSI for any SME with below 50 employees, which will be a huge cost saving for family businesses. Local enterprise office themselves, I've brought people who are interested in setting up a business and have introduced them to the supports and the great range, be it marketing, accountancy.
Paula, thank you for that.
I would always support
Marianne
SMEs.
Butler, the Green Party.
Thank you. Well, I would say that a lot of the supports that are there are nothing to do with scaling up. If you look at things like the Lean programme and the trading online vouchers, as I said earlier, the scheme that was just announced recently about, you know, offering insulation and solar and support of up to €120,000 to businesses, again, for small to medium enterprises, and again, not based on scaling. So there's a huge amount of support there. We were very critical of local government reform in 2014. The local enterprise offices is actually one of the success stories, because they were made one-stop shops for business advice and supports and grants. And again, I really just want to encourage people to do that. The other thing that I didn't get in when I spoke about RD as well was just about access to finance and the Strategic Banking Corporation, and we need to make it easier for SMEs to access that finance.
Thank you for that, for the Green Party. We've got to take a break, but we will get to Sinn Féin and Labour on this after the break. Jed Nash, to you, it's all about the availability of expertise, grants, the LEOs, and the important role that they play for the likes of small businesses and the concerns around their future.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know very well that the vast majority of companies in this country are actually micro enterprises, and I said earlier on in response to Owen, we have a huge over-reliance on foreign direct investment, and the reality is we need an absolute step change in terms of supporting Indigenous enterprise, and it's through the Leo office initially that we do that. Actually have set up the Leo office, and I also set up Microfinance Ireland, and they need to be constantly kept under review because the world is ever changing. Neither will I make an apology, and I think nobody should, for seeing minimum wages increase, auto-enrolment, things that workers are entitled to in what is a wealthy and successful country. I think the problem for businesses is that we had between 2016 and 2020, we'd wasted opportunities to actually incrementally roll those out. There's plenty of blame to go around there in terms of that particular administration, and it's the all at once that's concerning businesses, and I understand that. It's not that businesses are averse to supporting workers through this. They absolutely understand that, but I think a lot of this goes down to reform at the local enterprise office. Micheál is right, Competitive Start Fund, which I was involved with, was really, really important.
Okay,
that's about scaling up and making business more productive and innovative to export.
Rory.
Look, I've already said in relation to obviously the very specific moves that need to be made on hospitality, 9% the PRSI rebate, but I'm going to go back to energy costs, right? And like we've seen that Power Up grant. We've seen that it's been a bit of a disaster in relation to who can actually apply. We had particular issues with the increased cost of business grant. We have spoken about the need to offer something that's, a lot more streamlined through revenue. So see, when you're attempting to help businesses, you have to actually make it as easy as possible. So I still think there are issues. Yeah, look, we've all used the local enterprise office in relation to facilitating businesses that come to us. We need to make sure that it's absolutely fit for purpose. We've all spoken about Microfinance Ireland, but you'll have many a business that will talk about the difficulties in relation to accessing finance. So we need to be serious. I have to thank Hannah. Dundalk Chamber alongside Newry have dealt with a huge amount of issues that exist in this area in relation to cross-border workers. We need to see
Rory.
a cross-border hub.
Right, I just want to go back then.
And that's an issue that I will be
just to go back to Hannah.
Hannah,
having listened to the elected representatives, what's your own views on your own future as a small business?
I think, yes, I know there are a lot of LEO grants out there, but I think what I was hoping to hear from the panel was what additional supports that they're going to bring on that are not under the LEO grants. So one of the things I, for instance, struggle with is debt collection. How do I get that debt when people aren't paying me back? Or if I get sick, I don't get sick leave because I'm self-employed. So it's those additional supports that I was kind of hoping to get an answer on today, I think.
Okay, well, we'll try and have a think about that, and if we have time towards the end of the debate, we'll get to that. But I want to press on. And again, I want to remind the panel that time is very tight here. Sean McLean is chairman of LOUTH GAA, who joins us here in Dundalk. Sean.
Thanks very much, and thanks very much to the panel for allowing me the chance to ask the question here. With the support of Central GAA Finance Committee, LOUTH GAA have recently submitted an application to the Large Scale Sports Infrastructure Fund for funding assistance for the second phase of our stadium project. Although we were disappointed in our application was not selected in the initial allocation, our discussions with the Minister have been very productive. We have received confirmation that our application is valid and has been placed high in a reserve allocation list. Our submission underscored the significant community value that the new stadium would bring, benefiting not only LOUTH GAA but also LOUTH LGFA and LOUTH Camogie and other sporting groups. We outlined the pressing need for the dedicated venue to serve our clubs, schools, academies, colleges and county games, noting that over 20,000 GAA members in LOUTH currently lack a central facility for these events. This stadium would also play a vital role in enriching our community and supporting Gaelic games and numerous other community activities across the Legion. How can you help ensure that the funding will be allocated when it is required for the complete phase 2 of the project?
Okay, a major bone of contention in relation to funds that never got to the GAA when other sports got significant funding. A reasonable question to ask, Alison, given the impact that the GAA has, not just in this county, but in communities, and the role they play in terms of bringing younger people on and the facilities and the sheer energy that they bring to communities. It's a tough pill to swallow for them.
Look, Sean, we've spoken about this extensively, and we've met with Minister for Sport, Thomas Byrne, my colleague, and we know how disappointing it was to the thousands of GAA fans, players, etc. in Louth. There's no question there. But we do have an assurance that the stadium is on the list. It has not fallen off the list, and as Thomas Byrne has told you and me, it is a top priority for GAA in the country. So we will look forward to that funding being there. You can begin with phase 1, and the assurance is that funding will be there as soon as possible for phase 2.
Okay, Michael O'Dowd.
Furnishing my own GAA credentials, I played with the Wolf Tones during the 83 years. They won nothing, so I'm delighted they won this year, during the championship this year. So I'm fully supportive of the project. I think Peter Fitzpatrick deserves great credit for starting it, but Sean, yourself and the committee now, I believe, are the people to finish it and bring it to fruition. And I look forward to supporting any application that you make. On a separate note, my family, my 2 daughters have travelled abroad to work. They couldn't get a job here, and everywhere they went, they plugged into the GAA network in New York, in Abu Dhabi, in London, and it was absolutely tremendous. So it's a great organisation.
Okay, Michael, thank you for that. Kevin Callan.
Just in relation to the GAA, obviously we all know the massive part it plays in communities. Like the public meeting in Draminn last night was in St Kevin's, and you can see that it's a fundamental part of our county. The question of what can I do if I'm elected to deal with this? We see this pattern all the time. It's high up the list. It's getting priority. Like, it hasn't happened before a general election, and I'm deeply concerned that it's not going to happen after a general election. From that point of view, projects like this have to be put down as red line issues. They have to be delivered. And I think we have a serious issue. It's exactly the same in Drogheda with the Northern Cross route. For 25 years that was committed to that it would be funded from central government. Not 1 cent went into building it. So the stadium, for me, I support the GAA, and if I'm elected and if in any way I'm in a position to work with government, that is something that will be a red line for me.
Okay, Kevin. Niall.
Yeah, absolutely support. We are calling for a sports capital fund allocation every year rather than an ad hoc arrangement. We want to introduce a new requirement for all planning authorities to publish sport and recreational facility strategy, which would align with that. And we also want to see plans for pitches and facilities to be incorporated into each major planning application around the wider development. But yeah, we also from a GAA background, Jed will attest our 2 fathers used to knock the heads off each other in hurling. My father was an All-Ireland junior hurling winning champion. He was the captain in the late Millennium All-Star. I'm just shouting at me dad.
Paula Butterley.
In light of the tens of millions that have been invested in sports and community grants under Heather Humphreys, I actually have no doubt that Fine Gael in the next government will support GAA and other sports. I'm a huge fan and member of Gaelic Mothers and others. In the budget I made a proposal for a universal sports voucher for all families, because I believe in the benefit of sports for everybody and what it can help in mental health and just de-stressing families and youths across the board. So I'm fully committed to
Okay, Paula, thank you for that. Marianne Butler.
Thank you. Just to say as well, Minister Catherine Martin has increased the spending and sports spending 83% in the lifetime of this government, and there's been huge investments there. It was disappointing for both Drogheda United and the GAA that we weren't included, but I think both organisations realise there's a wee bit of work to be done to get to phase 2, and that they will ultimately be successful. And again, if elected, I will happily push for it, 100%. I think I'm going to be the closest to the stadium, and I have 2 young fellas, and we've travelled the length and breadth of this country, and it's a bad day when you're jealous of the setup in Enniskeane. We need it in Dundalk, we need it in County Louth, 100%.
Jed Nash.
Niall set out some of my GAA credentials, and well, I didn't play much hurling. I played with the Blues and originally O'Reilly's. Actually, I left the O'Reilly's when I was about 10 years of age to go to the Blues. My family have just about forgiven me for that. But look, what we need to do is make sure that the large-scale sports investment fund is actually an annual fund. We have the resources to do that now. The last time it was available was back in 2018, and that's not sustainable given the regional sports infrastructure deficits that we have around GAA and soccer. As well. I believe that this project will happen, and if I have anything to do with it, it will. It's absolutely crucial for our community. And I'd say one thing, I think it's important for the County Board, and this comes from a good place, to engage with all TDs on this, because there's a sense that only some are being engaged in this. It's really important because this needs to be a cross-community effort. The GAA is a cross-community organisation, represents everybody, and I want to be included in the process to secure this stadium, and I can guarantee you that I will be.
Rory O'Murrough, do you have any GAA credentials?
There would be terrible. Anyone from Knockbridge would be shouting at the radio now if I started speaking about them. So I'll apologise for that bit.
So you were never a good man under a high ball?
I had a wild hurling swing and played a tiny bit of football. Thought I was brilliant and then disappeared. Unfortunately, part of my ill-spent youth. Now, in fairness, look, I dealt with Sean in relation to this. Sean and John Horan and a number of other Oireachtas members then also met with the Minister in relation to this. I would have much preferred if the Minister had just gone publicly in relation to the fact of how high both Drogheda United were and how high that LOUTH GAA was in relation to the reserve list, and that it is a promise that needs to be fulfilled, if not from monies that come from a project that doesn't move forward, another project that come from future funding, and really that's a promise for a future government. And I don't think you're going to get anyone on this stage that's not going to promise to deliver, particularly a stadium that's in walking distance of my house. And in fairness to the GAA, we've already mentioned the community imprint. I dealt with Sean in relation to the puck fodder.
Okay, Rory,
what I am going to say is, I'd like to thank
Rory. When the pitch is built, you can tug out 10 seconds.
I'd like to thank him in relation to the work that he did in supporting the students of Dundalk Grammar School, and I think that is reaching a point of being resolved, so the kids will be able to play Gaelic.
That's good news to hear. Okay, Sean, you listened to everybody's at item on this. Everybody wants it to happen. It's a question of that the momentum has to be maintained.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that everybody's in support of it. So we will get started in phase 1, but we will need the funding for phase 2, and I'm glad that everybody's in support of that and will help that. As we've all alluded to here, like, sport is vital to the health and well-being of our children and all the community. It keeps the kids off the street corners, it gives them activity, and it keeps them from antisocial behaviour. LOUTH GAA go a long way to providing a lot of facilities for that, but the stadium is a major cog in this, and this we will need your support on. So I appreciate your help, and thanks very much for your support.
Okay, Sean, thank you for that. That's Sean McLean, who's chairman of LOUTH GAA. Let's take a break there. Let's get to our next question. Jackie McKenna and Gwen McKenna of the Family Addiction Support Network, where, there we go.
Hi, it's great to be here, and great to hear so many people talking about thriving communities, and so many passionate people about. Ireland is increasing in drug use and organised crime all across Ireland. Ireland remains the biggest users of cocaine in Europe and have 4 times the number of drug-related deaths. Families are the heart of every community, and organised crime and fear paralyse communities, so we won't have thriving communities unless the government puts this at the top of their agenda. For every one person that is misusing drugs or alcohol, it affects up to 6 people within the family that need access to services in their own right to heal the trauma, and that will in turn help support them in to better support the person in addiction to successfully go ahead with their rehabilitation. Following the Citizens' Assembly report earlier this year and the National 2-Day Conference on Trauma in the Community hosted by FOSSN, there is a clear need for policy focus and dedicated resources to support families and communities affected by drug use. investment into peer-led family support services, investment into additional bed facilities and access routes for mother and baby, and the rollout of the young person support programme. I'm asking you, how will you ensure that there is a whole government commitment and that these vital supports and services are made available in your community?
Thank you for that. I don't think there's anyone here who would argue with the point that the problem of drug use, availability and addiction is probably as bad as it was back in the days of the 80s when Tony Gregory was leading the charge against it. You only have to walk around, doesn't matter whether you're in Drogheda, Dundalk, Dublin city centre, it's becoming a plague. How do we deal with it, Alison?
Well, it's hard to imagine that just 6 years ago, Drogheda in particular was in the absolute grips of a drug feud, which was a murderous drug feud. It did have a ripple effect throughout the entire county and the North East. But thanks to the likes of the Gardaí and the Implementation Board, it has improved drastically. But obviously we know there are still things to be done. We need to work with addiction services. Whilst extra Gardaí will help, we need to get into the community and talk with the community. I do welcome the decriminalisation of cannabis that is in the manifesto, simply because it's not liberalisation, it's decriminalisation, which will allow focus to go on the harder drugs and to go after the drug dealers and not put, it's a compassionate way to look at things, it's health based, not to put those who are using maybe small amounts, personal amounts, through a legal system where we know that they could become worse and addiction could become more deep seated.
Okay, Michael O'Dowd.
I mentioned earlier that I helped start up My Streets, a not-for-profit in Drogheda, which started off by helping homeless people, people who had come through homelessness, to become tour guides in the town itself. And many of those people suffered from addiction problems and then became homeless and then came on to us. And sadly, some of them relapsed into addiction. So it is a major battle once you actually become an addict to overcome it. And we do need these peer groups to help people, and they need to be fully funded as well. And also we need to invest more as a country in mental health. And in Dundalk there's this Maxi's Law, which I fully support, which is mental health support at the point of need, free to the person.
Okay, Kevin Callan.
And I suppose just come back to part of what you said. It's the 6 people affected by the issue of alcohol and drugs and so on. And as an independent, when I'm going around the constituency, I suppose, because I'm not pitching a party message, generally people will just talk to me and tell me what's going on. We have massive gaps in terms of assistance for people, not only people with addiction issues, but also people who are family members, children and so on. What I would say is, for many years I worked with Drogheda Youth Development. I've worked with Drogheda Women's and Children's Refuge as a board member for many years. There are huge impacts on families around our constituency, and if I'm elected I will focus on those individuals and those situations that they find themselves in, because again we have a situation where government is telling people everything's in hand, everything's okay, and Michael mentioned mental health. Those services are not there at the minute.
Decriminalise the possession of small quantities of drugs for personal consumption. We will pursue a health-led approach with dealing with drug use, and we will increase funding in treatment and health services to ensure such services are supportive and not punitive. We want to create an expert commission to examine possible legislation around the legalisation and taxation of cannabis. We want to improve education and prevention and develop a comprehensive plan around this. We also want to gather resources at drug dealers who focus their attention on children. We also want to increase funding to combat drug trafficking and strengthen the Criminal Assets Bureau power.
Shopping list there. We don't have the time for the whole lot of it. Who am I going to? Paula Butterley next from Fine Gael.
Yeah, thank you very much for your questions. Let me be clear on one thing. I do not believe in decriminalising drugs of any description. Every day I see the effects of drugs that they have on the people themselves who are addicted to them, and to the families that you so rightly said about the 6 members outside of that. We need and we are increasing the supports for families and for those addicted, and we need to do more, and we need to do it earlier, because now the age gap is shifting downwards. So early intervention is crucial, and we also need to guarantee that there are more programmes to help these young people and older people, and we also need more Garda investment in that. And let me just say that we have the Community Safety Innovation Fund, which redirects all the assets from the CAB have managed to seize from crime.
Okay, Paula, I got to go
communities.
to Marianne Butler, the Green Party.
Just, I think first and foremost, there has to be a dedicated cabinet committee dealing with this, and it has to be a whole of government approach. And we need to do really practical things as well, like investing in our youth services. One of the things we want to do as well is expand the youth diversion scheme to 18 to 24-year-olds as well. And also we do need more Gardaí, and I know we're committed to increasing Garda numbers to 15,500 in the lifetime of the next government. But again, it does need to be a health-led approach. We do need more residential drug treatment in our communities, and prohibition is not working, so we need to come up with a different way to deal with this.
Okay, Jed.
Before it's popular or profitable politically, the Labour Party's very clear position on decriminalisation of the drug user, and let's not confuse that with drug gangs. That does not mean that drug gangs get away with what drug gangs get away with now. Jackie, I've worked closely with you in Red Door for a number of years, as other public representatives. There's issues around multi-annual funding for organisations at the front line, dealing with families in addiction, dealing with recovery, and trying to put people onto a path to recovery, and that needs to be addressed, as does the lack of residential beds in this community and in this region. The Citizens' Assembly was well ahead and is well ahead of Irish political parties by and large in relation to the attitude to drugs. We will never win that war, and let's be realistic about it. The resources that we use should be focused on prevention and supporting organisations like...
Yeah, look, not the first time I've been on LMFM talking about the absolute scourge that we have in relation to drugs. It wouldn't be the first time I spoke about the Family Addiction Support Network, and in fairness to Jackie, she could have just spoken about the difficulty they have in relation to getting funding themselves, the over and back between the HSE and the Department of Justice. And you're talking about an organisation that deals with family that are dealing with not only addiction but drug debt, intimidation, where people sometimes prefer to go to an outside organisation, and they've got the backing of the guards. And I think former Chief Superintendent Christy Mangan still sits on the body because he sees it as obviously being an organisation that can deliver. We know we don't have the addiction services. We all welcome the Citizens' Assembly. We also need to get real in relation to policing. I'll be honest, see at the minute, I know that the local authorities, that the TUSLA, that the Gardaí do not have the powers. Sometimes what you need to deal with is organised crime, but sometimes disorganised, chaotic characters who are used and abused and impact badly on communities.
I just want to go back to Jackie on this. Jackie, what do you make, Jackie, of what you've heard from our panel on this?
I think that there is an awful lot of focus on people in addiction. There needs to be a more awareness and a commitment to providing services for families and communities. I would have liked to have heard more about what I asked. How are you going to ensure that there's a whole government commitment to do this within, no matter who gets in? It has to be like the smoking revolution, where all of the departments all work together to make it happen. This really needs to happen in Ireland, because it is just awash with drugs, and as I said, we're not going to have families and communities the way that we have them. We won't have thriving communities unless this is put on top of the agenda.
Okay, very good. Thank you for that. That's Jackie McKenna there from the Family Addiction Support Network. We take a break. Yes, there's a yes-no answer to this question, and Frank Brady from the IFA wants to put it to you.
It's great to hear you all today. Are you all going to stand by the convictions that you have and promises that you have given us today? Because we've always got these promises for years before elections, and then after elections you're nowhere to be seen, and life rolls on and nothing changes.
Alison, yes, no?
My commitment to anything I've said today is true, yes.
Okay, Kevin, yes. Paula?
Leopards don't change their spots. I'm a woman of integrity and of my word.
Jed?
I've been earning the trust of the people allowed for 25 years now, and I want to earn that again.
Rory?
Absolutely. I've met you a number of times, Frank. What I say is what I'm going to do.
That's a yes. Marianne Butler.
Yes, I will continue to be proud to be the tail that wags the dog.
Niall McCrainer.
Yeah, I'd rather lose on the truth than win on a lie.
Okay, and Michael O'Dowd.
Of course, it's yes.
Okay, thank you for that. I notice a lot of agreement here on a lot of the issues amongst, and I'm looking at Aintu, Social Democrats, Sinn Féin, Labour, perhaps Independent. Why not coalesce? There's room at the inn for everyone.
Into have made it clear that we won't coalesce with the Green Party or Fine Gael. We will just talk to
I
all
didn't
other
mention the Green
parties.
Party or Fine Gael.
Sorry?
I didn't mention the Green Party or Fine Gael.
Okay,
I mentioned Aintu, Soc Dems, Sinn Féin, Labour. Jed, where are you on doing business with anyone? I know you have a red line issue when it comes to the Help to Buy schemes. You're not returning on that, by the way, just to be clear.
We've made it very clear that our objective is to elect the highest number of Labour TDs we possibly can and make the case for public investment.
Leave that to your closing
we see
statement.
government's complicated and is not really is not open to glib answers.
We know. Okay, fine. You're eating into your time here, Jed. So let's just get to closing arguments with everything. Start at the end of the table this time. Michael, you've about 60 seconds for closing.
So this election in Louth also includes East Meath. I just want to make a call out that I'm aware of the issues out there, need for a Garda station, more resources for the new houses going up, plus the removal of ramp tolls, which are causing major problems for commuters and for workers. Aintu are committed to reintroducing the planning permission status for centres for people for international protection, because the lack of planning permission has caused huge community divisions across this county, and it should be brought back. We're also against the waste of public money, and we all know about the bicycle sheds and the various other projects that the government have overrun. So a vote for Aintu is a vote for accountability in the next Dáil.
Alan McCrainer.
Yeah, so us and the Social Democrats, social democracy is an ethos in itself. We believe that the current government has over-privatised many things, housing, healthcare, education. We want to see a move away from that and a move towards the social good through capital investment. We want to see an end of 14 years of Fine Gael failure and Fianna Fáil's second housing disaster. So we want to see substantial investment in social good, social equity and social justice, and I'm calling on people to trust my sincerity in my approach to that.
Marianne Butler from the Green Party.
I have delivered for County Louth over the last 15 years, and my party in government has delivered over the last 4.5 years. We have reduced carbon emissions to their lowest levels in 30 years. We've doubled investment in public transport. We've more to do. We've slashed the cost of childcare by 50%, and we've massively increased support for the arts and sporting organisations. I think Leo Varadkar himself said the government was better because the Greens were there, and we have delivered and we want to continue delivering. So I'm asking people to vote Butler number 1 on the 29th.
Rory O'Murrough, Sinn Féin.
I'm asking people to vote for myself, for Antone Waters and for Joanna Byrne of Sinn Féin. We are the only show in town to replace 100 years of either Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael. If we're talking about dealing on, it's our housing plan, whether we're talking about in health services, we know the issues that exist in the Louth County Hospital not using them properly as regards community services. What we also have is the A&E in the Lourdes being a complete disaster, more training of GPs, more GPs to be directly employed, and we have to deal with the deficit we have. And I would agree with what has been said in relation to Maxey's law about fair access to mental health services. We don't have the beds, we don't have the assessment means, and we represent the communities that have been impacted by the drug scourge, so we are real in relation to what needs done.
This isn't a council election, it's a general election, it's a national election, and listeners have a really big decision to make on Friday week. It's about the direction of this county and the direction of the country. Everyday people in Louth over the last 25 years have welcomed me into their lives and into their confidence. They've entrusted me with their support, and I want to earn their trust and confidence again. Now, this is a wealthy country, but too many people are being left behind on housing, on care, on the cost of living, on climate. And we have the resources now to transform this country into a country that has the kinds of public services a rich republic like this is entitled to have. And this is not a job that should be left up to Conservatives who are simply not up to the job of transforming this country and making it more equal.
From Fine Gael.
I'm Paula Butterley, the Fine Gael candidate, a committed councillor who has worked tirelessly for the County of Louth and not just my municipal district. Under the guidance and part of the government with Simon Harris, we will go on and commit to the people of Louth and at a national level. I can deliver, I have delivered, I'll continue to deliver.
Kevin Callanan, Independent.
I'm asking people to consider an alternative this time in County Louth and East Meath, to vote for an independent with experience and credibility, somebody who will work on the failures for this constituency, the things that have not been delivered. We all know what they are, and my commitment is to work positively. I will be not whipped by a party, and I will not waste 5 years in opposition. I will work constructively, and I'm asking people to vote Kevin Callan number 1.
And finally, Alison Cummin-Fianna.
For years as a local journalist, I've reported on the challenges facing our community. Now I'm stepping up to tackle them head on. You've told me the issues that matter to you: rising costs, housing pressures, GP shortages, limited job opportunities, crime dereliction and the lack of facilities for young people. I've taken note, acting on them before I'm even elected. I'm passionate about supporting the arts, LGBTQ and disability rights, and the commitment shown by Fianna Fáil to women's health is very important to me. Alan, we need more female TDs so our voices can be heard. So vote Alison Cumburn number 1 for your local TD.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, we have a short amount of time left, and I want to go back to Owen Lennon, who asked the first question. You've been sitting for the past 3 hours listening to the politicians. Empty promises, rhetoric, or something of substance have you heard from them, or is it just the same old line as we head into an election?
Yeah, I think there's a mixture of both in there, and that there is the same old line as usual. And as IFA man says here, it's 20 years, the same government more or less, and nothing really much has changed in it. But a completely random question for everybody on it, a yes/no one for you if you want on it, is to reform the way we actually vote in Ireland. We go, you have your list of all your candidates, you tick your 1, 2, 3s. Did anybody ever consider putting a box at the bottom of it, none of above, so the public can actually come back to people and say, no, we don't agree with anybody's mandates, you just have to go back, look at it all over again and come back out?
Well, I mean, people spoil their votes if they want to make a protest vote.
In that way and put the option there and say, no, we don't agree with everybody.
Okay, Rory.
An awful lot of people spoil their votes. I think it's an absolute waste. No, I accept what you're saying. People put themselves forward. You either buy what they're selling or you don't. See, on that basis, and I would generally say to someone, vote, you need to vote, it doesn't matter who it is. And see, if you want even the right to gripe and complain afterwards, you may as well make sure that the person who best fits what you want to see in government, that you elect them and you elect their party or whoever else from a point of view of delivering. Whether that's disability services, whether, as I say, it's housing, whether it's all the multiple issues and failures that we're dealing with at this point in time.
Okay, but Chad, you nonetheless accept that sometimes we hear the same lines and the electorate feel that they're buying a pig in a poke. They never actually get what they asked for, and it's shrouded in, oh, well, we can't do this because all of a sudden money had to move from one department to another and our budgets have been squeezed. It's very difficult for the electorate to have confidence listening to politicians in debates like this. Well,
that's actually one of the reasons why I want to reform the budgetary process, because I've been involved in it quite a number of years. It's very opaque and lacks basic degrees of accountability. But I'll say this actually about the Irish political system. Irish politicians are probably among the most accountable in the world. Why? Because we have a proximity to the people we represent. Owen, when you ring me, have I visited your business? I have. I've listened to your concerns, and I've always tried to act on them as well. One of the things that I think we have a problem with in this system here in Ireland is we have one of the most restrictive proxy or postal voting systems going. And we will have all received correspondence from constituents over the last period of time. They're away with work. If you're not a civil service or member of the Defence Force or Garda Síochána, you won't be able to vote from abroad. If you are a student who is living abroad, you won't generally be able to vote either. So we need to make it more inclusive. We need to appeal to more people to be able to vote. And it's actually very easy to register your nomination to be on the ballot paper. We have, 25 candidates, 24 candidates for the election in Louth. So I think every political philosophy, and indeed none, is represented in the ballot paper. So choice will not be a problem, and accountability is not a problem either.
One of the issues that has blighted the government in its closing months was the whole question of waste. Financial waste, the bike shed, the security hut. It's very hard to stomach when you see that sort of money being squandered and wasted. What do you propose to do in the next administration to ensure it doesn't happen and that we as taxpayers get value for money?
I think in regards to money being wasted, there is certainly a space there for oversight, better oversight within departments. However, at the same time, I believe that the government and Fine Gael have delivered a number of initiatives to the Irish people and services that have served the people of County Louth and at a national level very, very well. You know, nobody likes to see money wasted, but you also have to look at the bigger picture and see what this government has delivered. And we've delivered a strong economy.
Hold on a second. When you think of the level of funding that has been squandered on the Children's Hospital, let me make the point. I will allow you to get back in. The amount of money that has been squandered on the Children's Hospital, the bike shed, the security hut, it's endless. How can anybody have confidence in an administration that doesn't have the tight oversight that's required?
I think Simon Harris's whole proposal in regards to an infrastructure department is absolutely necessary to address these issues. The Children's Hospital, yes, it has gone way over budget, but it is going to deliver a state-of-the-art, absolutely essential children's hospital that we need and we will have. 2/3 are open at this stage,
Alison,
I believe.
You wanted to get in.
Quick word. I really welcome the fact that in the Fianna Fáil manifesto that the OPW will be now put into a separate department where it will be open to more transparency and be held to account more often.
But you have to accept, Alison, it takes a calamity of the nature that happened in the OPW for action to be taken. Where was the oversight throughout the course of the OPW's history? And the signing off of monies, astronomical amount of monies with no oversight. Basic business common sense would tell you, hang on, there's something wrong with these figures.
And a government that can see that, a party that can see that and is now taking serious action on making it more transparent and making sure that the best use of public funds is put to use.
Michael, you want to get in? Michael O'Dowd.
Cringeworthy parts of the debate last night was when Simon Harris said he didn't sign off on the Children's Hospital and subsequently in the debate said that actually he did take responsibility for it. So waste is a huge issue, broken promise is a huge issue, and that is where local radio comes in, and you've got to hold us all to account once this election is over.
Okay, sorry, Kevin.
Clear about this. The government's inflationary policies are costing the average Irish household €1,000 a year. The OPW was gross waste on that bike shed. But it's another HSE. What we hear now, just put it into something else. It's like the HSE and Irish Water. Distance yourself from it in government and you can blame an entity. It's not the solution.
So what do you propose, Kevin?
I propose that ministers actually stand over departments they're responsible for, which they're not doing at the minute. And to say that it's a little bit of an overspend, it's the most expensive hospital in the world. Like, that is indefensible.
First time we've been developing this now for the last couple of years as public expenditure spokesperson. We're introducing a new duty of candour, a legislative responsibility in all public servants and civil servants at a senior level to actually take responsibility for the things they've decided on, and ministers then to be specific about the things that they've decided on, because this is affecting trust and confidence in politics and in terms of the use of taxpayers' money. It needs to change. It can change.
30 seconds.
Everything from the bike shed to the Children's Hospital, complete waste. We need an audit in relation to the waste in all government departments. We need legislation around procurement to make sure there's a greater level of accountability and transparency. We've absolutely wasted this. You know what I mean? We have had a huge level of money like we've never had in this state, and we have managed to let bad practice spend the people's money badly, and we don't have it for disability services and anything else.
Okay, sorry, I have to go to Niall. He had his hand up. Just briefly.
The people who got us into this trouble aren't the ones to get us out of it, so we encourage voters to vote left and transfer left. Okay, just make sure McCraner's number one.
We got to leave it there. Okay, Mara, very briefly.
No, we need to change the way we're doing things. We're paying HAP now to private landlords. We need to be front loading that and buying the house and doing cost rental. So we need to change the way we're doing things and do it long term.
Okay, we've got to leave it there. Alison Cummins, Fianna Fáil, Kevin Callan is independent. Paul Butterly, Fine Gael, Jed Nash, Labour, Rory O'Murraku, Sinn Féin, Marianne Butler, the Green Party, Niall McCrainer, who's Social Democrats, and Michael O'Dowd, Ain 2, and to the very kind members of our audience who came and asked the questions. I want to thank them. I also want to thank our panel for addressing those. And we will be back with you for our second debate, which is happening this coming Friday, same time, 9:15 till 12. Until then, from all of us here at the Fairways Hotel in Dundalk, good morning.
Election 2024 coverage on LMFM.